I was reading a fact the other day that the Senate, the US Senate in 1965 held a subcommittee that predicted the greatest problem of the future would be too much leisure time. And they predicted that by 1985, the year that Madonna came out with Material Girl, the year that Aha came out with Take On Me, the year that Tears for Fears came out with Everybody Wants to Rule the World, 1985, they predicted that the average American would work 22 hours a week in 27 weeks of the year. And I understand if you just want to walk out with me, I totally understand that. Because I get that I have people in this room who 40 hours sounds like a nice week. A lot of people in here probably work 60 hours. Before Thomas Edison and his inventions, it said that the average human being averaged 11 hours of sleep per night. Because imagine, if you don't have a light bulb to keep you up past the sunset, when it gets dark, you're probably gonna go to bed when the sun goes down, and you're gonna get up when the sun comes up. And I used to read after spiritual teachers and think they were so spiritual, like Charles Spurgeon, and read about how they would get up and pray at 4 a.m. And I thought, wow, they're just so spiritual, you know what I'm saying? But then I realized if you went to bed at 7 p.m., there's nothing really else to do other than pray at 4 a.m. So, 2007 will probably go down in the history books as one of the greatest changes really in the courses of human history, even though we didn't maybe imagine it being that. 2007 was the year that the iPhone was released into the wild. And get this, in 2007, the average human attention span was 12 seconds. So not a ton of wiggle room there, not a lot to work with. In a period of 13 years, 2020, in 2019, a study came out that said the average human attention span has dropped to 8 seconds. To put things in perspective, and I agree we should all just walk out after I say this, a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. Living Word Church, we are losing to a stinking goldfish. I don't know what they're paying attention to. I don't know what they're watching, but they're watching it longer than we're watching it. 9 seconds versus 8 seconds. Why I say all of this is a famous theologian that I really like named Dallas Willard says that the greatest threat to spiritual experience in the modern age is not science and it is not sin, but it is distraction. We are being distracted into spiritual oblivion. And listen, I'm not saying we need to go back to some pre-digital age, but what I am saying is maybe this carries some interesting implications about our spiritual lives. The fact that we cannot pay attention longer than 8 seconds. Something that I found really interesting is, I talked about this last time, Moses, a man in the Old Testament, one of the most pivotal figures, gets his calling and his identity from a miracle where he sees a bush that's on fire. And that's not really the miracle, but it's that the fire doesn't consume the wood on the bush. But what's interesting is that it takes at least 2 minutes for wood to be consumed by fire. So Moses would have had to stare at this bush for at least 2 minutes to even know there was a miracle there. So we could start this morning by saying to everyone under the sound of my voice, to experience God, it simply begins with paying attention. It doesn't demand that you consider yourself a spiritual person. It doesn't demand that you're a good person. It doesn't demand that you follow the 10 Commandments. It doesn't demand that you attend church regularly. It doesn't demand that you even call yourself Christian. All that it demands is that you pay attention to the moment. But if we're never in the moment, could it be that we are actually missing out on all this abundant life that Jesus has offered us in this moment? I want to open up in Luke chapter 4. I'm going to title this message, Quiet Place. Everyone say, Quiet Place. When Jesus returned from the Jordan River, he's been anointed. He was full of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit led him away from the cities and the towns and out into the desert. That word desert in the Greek is the word eremos. And eremos means, it's not so much about a literal desert, it means a quiet place. So it says he was led by the Spirit into the quiet place. Let's look at verse 2. And for 40 days, for about a month and a half, the Spirit led him from place to place in the quiet place. And while there, the devil tempted Jesus. Another translation says that the Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And I've always read that and just thought it was really weird, because that doesn't really make sense that the Holy Spirit would lead Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, because I had always assumed, like, isn't that just like the devil? That the devil would come and he would meet you when you're most tired, that he would meet you when you're hangry, when you haven't slept in a while. But I am gonna make the case today that the devil met Jesus in the quiet place, not because the quiet place was a place of weakness, but I believe it was the place where Jesus' powers were heightened to the uttermost extent. That Jesus is at a place not of weakness, but of strength. And what you'll find here is Jesus overcomes the temptations of the devil and then immediately goes on his first day on the job as Messiah, and he goes to a city called Capernaum. He basically just owns, just like preaches, heals, miracles happen, word starts to get out about him. And watch what happens in verse 42 though. After one day, everyone say one day. So he has spent a month and a half in the quiet place, alone with God. He gets one day healing and doing Messiah work. And look what it says. The next morning, Jesus snuck away and he found a place, that word in Greek, eremos. He found a quiet place away from the crowds. So the Messiah spends a month and a half alone with God, comes back for one day of work, then goes back to the quiet place. So what you can do though in the book of Luke is track Jesus' ministry along two axis points. It is almost as though the more famous and busy Jesus becomes, the more time he spends in the quiet place. But isn't it interesting, at least for me, and maybe you guys are all just a lot more spiritual than me, is the more busy I become, the less time I spend in the quiet place. The more busy I become, the first thing to go usually in my life is time alone spent with God. And I'm gonna make a case for the quiet place today. And I'm gonna try to make this message really, really, really practical. I know it'd be really attractive to come in here for your first message of 2020 and give you a message on vision or a message on ambition, but I'm gonna try to slow you down coming into 2020. Do you know that Jesus was never in a hurry? Never once was he in a hurry. But we live lives where the word slow carries a negative connotation in our culture. When the service is bad at a restaurant, what do you say? It was slow. When you don't like a movie, you say it was slow. When someone has a low IQ, what do we call them? Slow. So all these words, slow, has such a negative connotation in our culture, in this fast-paced American where you show up to dinner and the last thing you want to tell your friends is, oh, I have nothing going on tomorrow. It's the last thing you want to say. What's attractive is somebody saying, yeah, no, I get up every day at 5 a.m. and I get on my grind, baby. I get up at 5 a.m. and then I work out and then I journal and then I get in my Bible maybe and then I go to work, and guess what? Then I spend like 4 extra hours at work. Then I come home, I work out again. Then I don't even sleep. Who needs sleep? I sleep 3 hours. Like, that's like kind of attractive. Like, dang, he's so ambitious. Like, look at his vision. Wow. But we are addicted to a life of hurry. And as our culture has sped up, we are losing more and more time to be simply present to the moment. There is a stat that recently came out that said the average American, this is crazy, touches their iPhone 2,617 times a day. 2,600. And I know it sounds like a stretch, but think about it, touches your iPhone. We've been trying to, anybody who's tried like a digital detox, my wife and I have been trying this on weekends where we just lock away our phones in the closet, and it is insane. It's like it calls out to you. Like the second we'll get alone and we're like starting to have a really deep conversation, and then you'll just hear, bing, from the closet, like calling my name, like, you have to check this text. Well, what if someone needs me? Probably someone needs me, right? And then it's like, no, they don't need me. But I wonder, I understand for anyone in this room who's like, oh goodness, this is gonna be another like religious message about how you need to spend more time with Jesus. And I pray that it wouldn't be that for you, but I am gonna make a case. Do you remember in the 90s when we called something a quiet time? You remember that? I'm gonna make a case like it's 1999 for the quiet time again. Because what's interesting is you find this verse in, when God shows up to Elijah, we've translated it weird. We always say that God spoke to him in a still small voice. But if you look at that translation, we didn't really know how to say that God spoke to Elijah in silence. Meaning that God literally is silence. And I'm gonna get more into that in a moment. How I really started to flesh this out in my own life, though, is I wanted to start my new year off with a time of quietness. And so I booked 2 nights at a Catholic hermitage. Basically what a hermitage is where you literally live like a hermit for like 2 days. You kind of take a vow of silence. You don't talk to anybody. You go out and you stay in a cabin in the middle of the woods with no electricity. All they give you is a loaf of bread, and there's just nothing to do. No phones. You can't read other books. It's just the Bible and maybe a journal. And so I'm super excited. My personality type's like, yeah, I'm just gonna check this off my task list. Like, I'm ready to get this spiritual experience done with. Let's go. And so I show up with my hurried pace. My wife drops me off. I show up at like the front big building or whatever it is. And I'm a really fast walker. Like early on in our relationship, the most tiffs that my wife and I got in was probably because of how fast I walk and how slow I thought she walked. And so I like walk really close. I like walk really fast up to the front building. I open the door and I'm looking around kind of frantically, ready to get this spiritual experience going. I'm ready to get to my cabin. And I promise you, this Catholic priest, he's Franciscan, he walks out the door. I'm gonna literally do his pace, all right? This is his pace, no over-exaggeration. His face wasn't as creepy as mine. I don't know why mine is creepy right now. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like a haunting or anything. But he walked so slow, like that person in the grocery store that you just want to lose your Christianity on. You know what I'm talking about? Like I'm just trying to get to the mangoes, Judy. Thank you. I love all the Judys in this room. But he walks out that slow. And I notice, first off, how much louder I am than him. I start off the whole thing, and I'm just so excited. I'm like, hi there, I'm Jamey Hammond. I have a reservation for 3 p.m. in the middle of the cabin. I'm excited to experience God. And he's like, again, that's what he does. This is how long he takes. Hi. I'm like, hi. Hi, I'm ready, yeah, all right. It's like 12 seconds of silence there, okay? And he takes me into his back. He's like, we're gonna get started with an orientation. I'm like, okay. And I like literally walk faster than him to the room of the orientation. And so I slow down, but he's asking me like, we sit down in this chair and he goes, so what do you want to experience here, Jamey? And I go, Well, honestly, I'm just excited to get my new year started and really have like a real spiritual experience with God. And I'm excited to get some vision, really get some clarity on some things. And I'm just like going on. And I can see this look in his face where he says, I feel so bad for what you're about to experience. Oh, you poor little whippersnapper. Yeah. So he drives me out to this cabin out in the woods. And all this cabin has is a rocking chair and a bed. And so I get there, I got my Pentecostal self all fired up. I'm ready to bring down revival in this cabin. Okay, so, ready, I sit down. And yeah, I'm ready, I'm bringing down Azusa Street in the cabin, version 2. This is happening. 20 minutes of prayer. And then I got super bored, like, and there's no smartphone by me. There's like nothing I can just grab or distract myself with. All I can do is watch this squirrel eat an acorn in front of my window. This is nice. So I got tired. There's nothing else for me to do other than sleep. I fall asleep, and then I wake up in pitch black darkness. And you want to know the only light they have in this cabin is a lantern. I don't know how to light a lantern. I don't know, y'all might be like lantern lighting experts, but I've never lit a lantern. I've never, yeah. If I had a phone, I could have called my grandpa. I'm sure he's lit many lanterns in his life, but I know he's watching. It was good. But it's pitch black darkness, and I can't light the lantern, so I have to sit in darkness. And I'm trying to fast the whole thing. And for any of you who know me, food, I crush food. Food is my thing. My goal over Thanksgiving was to gain 10 pounds in a week. I gained 13. Like, I love food. And so I decided I was gonna fast it. And I kid you not, the first 10 hours were hell. Hell. It was interesting though, because a lot of pain came up first. Like a lot of really negative emotions were the first thing that came up in me. Even though I'm alone with God, I thought that I'd be feeling joyful, I thought I'd be feeling peace, but no. The first thing that erupts is all that voice. All that pain. It's almost like, it's wild. It's like they came up out of the surface and they were like, hey, we're what's been lurking underneath your distracted smartphone life. You know that thing you never had to deal with because you really never sat alone in silence and just sat there? We're here now. All that pain for 10 hours, and I just had to sit in it. I can't call anybody. You can either go on a walk or you can sit in silence or pray. That's all you can do. But I kid you not, after 10 hours, and I don't mean to sound over dramatic or over spiritual or anything like that, but this was the most life-changing experience of my life. Because I broke through this barrier of all this pain, and I entered into what St. Augustine, the old church father, he used to say that entering into silence is entering into joy. And I felt myself break through into this place of such secure happiness. And I'm not talking about like that plastic Instagram dopamine hit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a real, stable joy, peace, love, like an enjoyment for life, an enjoyment for the simple things. I came into it and it radically changed my life. I was reading this in Psalm 62. This is what I was reading in my quiet place in the cabin. It says, this is David, my soul quietly waits for the true God alone. I like another translation that says, my soul is silenced. Everyone say silenced. I like that. My soul is hushed for the true God alone. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock and my deliverance, my citadel high on the hill, and I will not be shaken. So David says this real confident statement about God. And then, watch what he says in verse 3. He goes on a very long Twitter rant, like the thing he's about to just tweet. He's about to go on a rage here. He goes, how long will you attack a man? How long will all of you strive to crush your prey when he's like a leaning fence or a wall on the verge of collapse? Like you just step on me when I'm down. Their only purpose in life is to knock him down from his prominent position. They love lying. Verse 5. Into my face, when others are around, they speak a blessing on me. They say, oh no, hi, how are you? No, you look so good. Wow, I'm doing good too. Nice to, yeah, I'll see you around. Let's get coffee sometime. But inwardly, they're mumbling a curse. When they're not by me, they say something entirely different. When I opened up my new year, before I went up to the cabin, it was peculiar that it happened right before this cabin experience for me, is I found out like New Year's Day that some people that I really loved and trusted had been saying really like hurtful things about me. And it hurt me, but then the next day I was calling into the offices here and I don't have the number memorized. And so, you know when you look up the number and when you look up the number of a place, it shows the Yelp reviews. And you guys, I got sucked down the hole, the deep, dark hole of Yelp reviews. And I'm happy at first because I'm reading these Yelp reviews and given most of the Yelp reviews are gonna be negative because most of the people who leave reviews have had a negative experience, right? So, but first I'm happy because none of them are about me. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm good. Grandpa's tough, he can handle that, as long as it's not about me. My dad and grandpa can handle all that, that's fine. Just stay away from me. So, but then I'm good. But then I looked at the removed comments section. I'm like, ooh, these must be juicy. Let's go to these. Open them up. I'm good. Nothing is about me until we get to Ralph. Oh. Ralph. I don't know if Ralph was hangry on a cold, hard day in 2015, but he went in on your boy, okay? Verbatim, this is what Ralph says. Ralph goes, I love Mac Hammond, but it's the younger Hammonds that give me the heebie-jeebies. And at first I thought, wow, that's really comforting. At least the fact that he said heebie-jeebies implies that he's a really cool guy. He said heebie-jeebies. I haven't heard that in a really long time, but that's cool. He said heebie-jeebies. And then he goes, less so, Jim. Oh, and this is the part that got me. He says, but Mac's grandson, this is how he spelled my name, Jaime. He called me Jaime. Yo. At this point, I'm like, all right, Ralph, we about to throw hands, you call me Jaime. First you say heebie-jeebies, which I'm not okay with in general, and then you called me Jaime. So then he says, his grandson Jaime gives me the creeps. Whenever he speaks, the hair on the back of my neck stands up straight. I sense no level of authenticity in him. I understand the want to get up and to speak in front of people, but I don't think that just because you're the grandson of a preacher that it makes you anointed. Yeah. And I don't know, listen, I don't know if it's the bus station that did it to me. I don't know if it's St. Paul that did it to me. But there's just a little part of me, you know what I'm saying, that's like, listen, Ralph, you can show up to St. Paul and I can show you a little bit of authenticity if you want to, Ralph. Oh, no, man, we can do a little bit of that, Ralph. It's 2015, like I'm just a baby. 2015, I'm trying to figure all this out. I'm sure I might have some sermons where I try to sound like T.D. Jakes, and I try to sound like Judah Smith, and I try to sound like Creflo Dollar, and I might have some sermons where I try to sound like Joseph Prince. But you know, can I just say this to all the young leaders, anyone who's I don't know, maybe anyone in this room or watching who you feel like God's called you to something, there's something deeper and you can't really explain it, that it's okay for you to be an echo for a while until you find your own voice. Because you will come to a place where you find out that Saul's armor doesn't fit you, David. And that same armor that might have worked for somebody else, it doesn't work for you, and that's okay. You might only have a sling and a stone, and that might be all that you have, but it's enough to kill the giant, and you need to be secure in your own voice. You need to be secure in your own relationship. The only reason I'm up here, baby, is because I am willing to occupy, and I feel secure in my own relationship with God, and I'm not just gonna be a copy and paste of my other family members. I'm confident and secure in my relationship with God. That's why I'm here. And you gotta be okay with that. So Ralph, I go up to the cabin with Ralph. Ralph in my ear. And I read this, what David said. I don't know why, it gets me so good, because right after he goes on this long rant about all these people that have hurt me, all these people you talk behind my back, all these people, you're so fake, all these people. And then he goes, verse 5, it says he salahs, he pauses, he gets still. And he says, my soul is silenced for the true God alone, because I hope only in him. And I heard this in my silent time, and I pray that you hear me, that the solution to your pain will not be to silence the voices of those that have hurt you, but to silence the voice of your soul. Because isn't it true that at the end of the day, you could fight back against all the voices, and we've got everyone under the sound of my voice. You have had people say you're not enough. You've had people say you're not gonna amount to anything. You've had people doubt you. You've had haters your whole life that have never believed in you and told you you're never gonna do anything, told you you're not gonna be a good father, told you you're not gonna be a good mother, told you you're just gonna be like everyone before you. But can I tell you, even if they came to you in 2020 and said, listen, I'm sorry, I was wrong about you, even if you got the perfect revenge on them, even if you accumulated enough success and wealth to really get them to say, I'm sorry, I was so wrong about you, that still will not silence the voice on the inside. In 2020, you know what we need? Not a silence to our external storms and our external fights. I need a silence on the beast on the inside. We talk all about the Goliath on the external and the debt you need to get through and the pain you need to get through. But you know the real Goliath that's keeping you from being who you want to be? It's this. It's the voice you woke up with this morning. It didn't even wait for you to get through your morning routine, and it already said, you're not a good mother. The voice some of you woke up with, like the devil didn't even wait for you to get situated in your day, and I got my day going. No, you woke up depressed. You woke up anxious. I woke up this morning feeling inadequate, like I'm not enough. In 2020, I don't know about you, but I want a silence for my soul. I know cars and vision and promotions are good, but you know what I want? You know what would be the healthiest year I've ever had? Is if I got silence in here. If I got a silence to the voice that is always chattering to me. It's not the voice of Ralph that makes me doubt me. It's the voice of Jamey that makes me doubt me. As Charles Spurgeon said, he said, the greatest enemy is enemy. It's in me. Your greatest opponent, and I know that this is in motivational speeches all the time, but it truly is. It's not the haters, even though not a lot of us really have haters, but it's not the external things that are keeping you from your vision of who you want to be and your vision of your life. It is the voice on the inside. You know what David says? He says, the only thing that has the power to kill this giant is God. The only thing that has the power to silence your own soul is God. You're not, I'm preaching to like the ambitious people in here. If you win an Oscar, it's not gonna do anything for your soul. If you get the award and you become a millionaire, that voice that your father told you you're never gonna be enough, that voice is still gonna be here. It's still gonna be here. And can I tell you something? That's a much darker feeling. That's a dark, dark, dark feeling. For you to finally get the corner office and you got the car and you got the girl and you got it all. But I'm still not happy. I'm still depressed. Why do I still feel like I'm inadequate? Why do I still feel like I got these voices? And David says, upon God alone is my soul silenced. And so I want to make a case for you getting time this year. And I know it's basic. I know it's simple. But you regaining that time alone with God that maybe we've gotten too busy to have, and I understand that. But even if it's 2 to 3 days a week where you just said, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna take 10 minutes to just be alone with God. I'm just gonna take 15 minutes and I'm just gonna be alone with no distractions. I'm gonna sit in my comfy chair, I'm gonna light a candle, and I'm just gonna be alone with God. And I'm gonna give you 4 practices on how you can unhurry your life in 2020. We're doing something at St. Paul right now. We're calling it the 28-day pacemaker, where essentially we're trying to slow down your life coming into 2020 to really remove all the hurry from your life. And so we're starting off this week with something called silence and solitude, where essentially we're just trying to practice a time of stillness and silence before God. For any of you who don't, I feel like I haven't sold you. Let's go to Judges 1. I'm gonna give you a little Hebrew here, okay? And I just wanna say this. You don't have to know Hebrew or Greek to be spiritual or know the Bible. I think it'd be a really good thing if we just did what the Bible said in English. I think that'd be a great thing. But in the Old Testament especially, if you dig into some of this stuff, you can find really deep meanings. So the tribe of Manasseh, which means forgetfulness, failed to drive out the people who lived in the cities and surrounding villages of Bethshan, Tanakh, Dor, Iblim, and Megiddo. Verse 28, and watch what happens. The Canaanites, the enemy, continued to live in those regions, for they were determined. Everyone say determined. So the enemy of Israel is determined to live in these places. But when the people of Israel grew strong, they made the Canaanites their slaves and forced labor and did not completely drive them out. This is really, really interesting. Let's go back to verse 27. I'm gonna go through all the names of these places in Hebrew, and it gives us a message. Bethshan means house of quietness, quiet place. Remember what it said? That the Canaanites were determined to be there. Meaning the enemy is determined to occupy a quiet place. Tanakh, it comes from a Canaanite origin, and honestly, none of the scholars really know what Tanakh means, and so I'm not gonna stretch it and try to say something that it's not. And so we don't know what Tanakh means, but we do know what the other 3 mean. And it's really wild what they say. Dor means house. Everyone say house. It's like a refuge. It's your refreshing place. It's where you get your energy. It's where you take a deep breath. It's where you get your strength back. It's where you feel safe. This is your home. So Dor means home. Iblim means devoured. Do you remember what it says about the devil, that he walks to and fro, seeking whom he may devour? And then Megiddo means to be torn from. So if we put all of these together, it's almost like it's saying that if your quiet place, which is your refuge, your safe place, the place that you get energy, the place that you get strength, if your safe place, your quiet place gets taken, you get torn away from Maybe you fill in the blank. Not heaven, not Jesus. I'm not talking about any of that. But maybe what this little picture is saying is that if the enemy is allowed to occupy your quiet place, you will experience some form of being torn away from something you were designed to have. You know what else happens? If you don't occupy a quiet place, watch this, verse 28. What does it say? The Canaanites still lived there, but when the people of Israel grew strong, they made the Canaanites their slaves. But wait, they weren't supposed to make them the slaves. They were supposed to drive them out. So what happens when you compromise your quiet place? You will end up coping with things you were never meant to cope with. You'll end up living around and making excuses for things that you were never meant to live around. Things that you were meant to be completely free from, you'll just start to say, well, I've learned how to live around that. I've learned how to live around it. I'm fine. I'm good. I pray to God that no one in the 11 a.m. service is coping with things that you should not be coping with. And we could go deep into this, but I'm just trying to make a case that, let's take back Beth Sean. Let's take back our quiet place in 2020 where, you know what, I'm gonna designate some time, and even if it means I get up when I wake up and I am going to be silent just for 20 minutes. So I'm gonna give you 4 practices on how you can be alone with God. So I'm gonna make this really practical. I'm going to be uploading an instructional video on how to do these practices. These practices have existed in the Jesus tradition for a very long time. But I'm gonna be actually posting a video. This is a shameless plug for my social media. This will be on my personal account and probably Living Word St. Paul's Instagram account. And this will just kind of give you like an instructional, I'll kind of not skim, but I'll try my best to explain them to you in this service, but that video will probably really help you. The first practice that could really help you unhurry your life and practice being alone with God is called breathing prayer. Everyone say breathing prayer. Breathing prayer has existed for a long time, but essentially what you do is you first pick a time and you pick a place. For any of you who maybe aren't used to spending like alone time with God, maybe it feels a little bit weird, just start slow. Don't try to do 7 days a week right away. Just try 2 to 3 days a week, 10 minutes at a time if you have it. If you're like a parent to young children, I've heard that a good time to do this is when you put the kids down. If you work really like unflexible hours, a great time is when you're coming home from work in your car. But essentially, I'll show you how to do this. The first one's called breathing prayer. And you just kind of come to a place of quietness. And for any type A personality who are like, I do not want to sit still for like, I can't do that. You can go on a walk, you can do something with your hands, but just come to a place of quietness. And you just start to breathe. You just breathe deep. And it usually takes me about like 2.5 minutes to really get in a rhythm and really get present to the moment. Once you get present, you start to turn every breath into a prayer. So what you'll do is you'll imagine yourself on the inhale a good, like a part of God. So I'll inhale and I'll start off, I'll inhale love. I'll go. And then on the exhale, I'll exhale all my anger. And if I'm really angry, if I'm thinking about Ralph a lot, I'll do that breath a few different times. I'll go. If you're a really worried person, you inhale peace and you exhale anxiety. If you're a person that feels like you need to control a lot of things in your life, you inhale hope and you exhale the need to control. If you find that it's really hard for you to be content, inhale contentment Exhale, discontentment. And honestly, I haven't been able to practice that for maybe more than like 10 minutes at a time, but every time, usually it works really, really well, and I feel really just at peace for the day. The second one is called feeling prayer. Everyone say feeling prayer. I love this one because usually when we talk about feelings in a place where we talk a lot about faith, sometimes just because we believe so much in faith, we can come to a place where we think emotions are bad. And if we're not careful, you'll start to have people, when someone maybe has just experienced a tragedy, you just lost a loved one, you'll start to have people come up to them. I'm always shocked at people that I've pastored, watching people come up to them at funerals and say, oh, well, God has a plan. Or, oh, well, God works all things together for the good of those that love him. Can you shut up? Real talk. No. You're not the one in their shoes. You're not the one who just lost a loved one. So please, what they need right now is not solutions, they need solitude. They need someone who's just gonna be there for them. So can I just say to anyone who has been told you are not allowed to grieve, if Jesus himself grieved when he lost his friend Lazarus, even though he knew Lazarus would be raised from the dead, I venture to say you have to grieve too. I venture to say, and can I tell you something? Sometimes you can over-spiritualize it and we tell people, well, just rebuke that. Well, just rebuke that. Just bind and loose that. You know what's interesting though? I end up counseling these same people 4 years later, and those same things that they bound and loosed 4 years earlier, they're still facing 4 years later. Why? Because they were never allowed to feel them. I pray every person in this room, you have allowed yourself to feel. When you were made in the image of God, it meant that you have emotions. It meant that you feel, and that is a part of God. And so I pray that every person in this room, if you have not allowed yourself to grieve, you've not allowed yourself to cry, because maybe that doesn't look like the faith thing to do, please do the faith thing to do, which Jesus showed when he did grieve, that you should feel. So this is feeling prayer. What you do is do the same thing you started with breathing prayer. Just start by breathing, get present. And what happens, this happened to me at the cabin, if you sit in silence long enough, you'll start to have something just kind of come up in you, things you never dealt with. So it'll be uncomfortable at first, but maybe if you're a really angry person and you never really got through that anger or processed that anger, that'll come up first. Or maybe you just feel anxious that day. Or maybe it's a lot of worry. Maybe it's happiness. Whatever the emotion is, you don't judge it though. Don't judge it. Just let it come, sit in it. And there's something about naming it. That's why Jesus, when he met a demon-possessed man, he asked the man, "What's your name?" Because there's power in naming it. So it's like, if you feel anxious, you just simply say, you think to yourself, okay, I'm a little anxious. And then you let it pass through. And then you just express what you're feeling to God in complete honesty, authenticity, raw, real, honest, however honest you want to be. And that one's really, really, really healthy. That one's called feeling prayer. The third one's called Lectio Divina. Who's ever heard of Lectio Divina? Raise your hand if you ever heard of it. So this is an ancient practice on how to read scripture. And for any of you who find Bible reading kind of boring sometimes, this has made it really, really good for me. This is kind of a lot to explain, but I promise I'm gonna post a video that explains how to do this in like a really, really simple way. But first off, you'll pick a scripture. If you're writing this down, first off, pick a scripture. I did Psalm 62. You can do Psalm 23, Psalm 81, John 15. Those are great places to start. But just start with a scripture that talks about how loved you are by God, or something just comforting. And what you do is you begin with something called lectio. These are Latin words. Lectio, you read the passage slowly, pay attention to what shimmers, what sticks out to you. Pause on it and let it expand your mind. So I did this with Psalm 62. This is how we would read it. My soul quietly waits for the true God alone. My salvation comes from him. And so what'll happen though is you'll just be reading it and you read until something, it'll be just one word. It could be one word, could be a phrase, it'll just pop to you. Then you pause on that word and you let it expand your mind. So just say that the word alone popped to you and you just stay on that, alone. My soul is silenced for God alone, alone. So nothing else will silence my soul. There's nothing else in my life that could hush my soul. And you just let it expand. The vocabulary expand, your thoughts expand. You just pause on what shimmers though. Then you do something called meditatio, which is meditation. You finish reading, you read the passage again, you focus again on what shimmers, but now it's about what is God saying about your life. So what does this mean for my life? Not just an idea that meant something for people centuries ago, but what does it mean for Jamey Hammond right now? Then you do something called oratio. Oratio means to talk back. So simply you just talk back to God about what you're seeing in the scripture. Then contemplatio, which is contemplation. Pause, sit in his presence, express whatever is in your heart. Then 8 is incarnatio, which is simply to ask God for an action step. How can I bring this into my daily life? So that's Lectio Divina, and that's really helped me with my Bible reading. And then the 4th spiritual practice is literally called the practice of retreat, where you don't have to go to a cabin with the Franciscans to do it. You don't have to go away really, really far away. But there are spiritual teachers that recommend you take one day a quarter and you just said, I'm gonna devote this whole day to just being with God. And I know that sounds extreme. Maybe it's just 6 hours. Maybe if you can't get away from the kids, it's just like the first 7 or 8 hours of the day. But you practice a retreat quarterly to just dedicate that time being alone with God. We'll end this service by practicing some breathing prayer together, and then we'll take the offering, and then we will get you out of here. Yes. So, start, and let's all just, at first, what's really weird is how uncomfortable silence is. It's one of the most awkward things ever in our culture. But just kind of stay with me. Let's all just kind of get present to the moment. Let's just kind of just ease into your chair. You'll be out of here in a moment. But let's just kind of ease into this moment with this group of people. And just start to breathe deep. And just focus on your breath. If you have to close your eyes, that can work well in this. Take deep breaths. Exhale all those toxins out of your body. It's funny, I know I sound like a yoga instructor right now. I feel a little bit like that, but this is a spiritual practice. Now that we get in a little bit of a rhythm, usually it takes a little bit longer to get in a rhythm, but let's start just by inhaling love, whatever that looks like to you. Kind of get an image in your head. Inhale love, and then exhale all the anger you have. Like just push it out. Okay, ready? For all the people who are deal with a lot of anger. Let's do it again. Let's inhale love. Exhale anger. For all the people dealing with a lot of worry in your life, let's inhale peace. Exhale all your worries. For anyone who deals with a lot of fear, let's inhale hope and exhale fear. Exhale fear. Let's do that one again. Inhale hope. Exhale fear. Okay, and that's a little example of breathing prayer in 3 minutes. Guys, I know this message was practical, maybe a little bit random, but I hope it encouraged you. I hope that it helped you kind of set the pace for your 2020, because I know that this has done a lot for my life.